Listen, I have been charting star systems for the Galactic Council for approximately 217 cycles now, and never once have I encountered anything quite as absurd as what happened on that miserable little blue planet they call Earth. My name is Qorth. Qorth, the surveyor, they used to call me. Back when I had a reputation that did not involve running away from a creature the size of my boot. The mission seemed simple enough. Standard reconnaissance. The High Command wanted biological samples from Terra, specifically from what the humans call Africa. We were supposed to swoop in, grab a few specimens, maybe scan some flora, and leave before the dominant species even noticed we were there. Easy. Routine. I had done this exact job on 43 other worlds without incident. But humans? Humans are where logic goes to die screaming. We materialized our transport vessel in what the database indicated was a remote settlement. Sparse population. Minimal technology. Perfect for a quick extraction. The sun was setting over the dusty plains, painting everything in shades of orange and gold that would have been beautiful if I were not so focused on the job at hand. My partner, Velk, was checking the bioscanners while I piloted our cloaked hoverpod toward a small dwelling on the edge of the settlement. Velk is what you might call overly confident. He has 3 eyes, which he seems to think makes him superior to everyone else in the Survey Corps. Personally, I think it just means he has 3 times the capacity for poor judgment. Readings show only 1 human life sign inside, Velk announced, tapping his scanner with one of his 6 fingers. Small mass, likely a juvenile specimen. Perfect, I said, bringing the pod down behind a cluster of acacia trees. In and out. We sedate the subject, take hair and tissue samples, and we are gone before anyone knows we were here. The dwelling was made of mud brick and corrugated metal, held together by what I can only describe as optimistic thinking and possibly string. There were no guards, no security systems, no electronic surveillance. These humans lived so simply it was almost quaint. Almost insulting, really. We approached the structure using standard stealth protocols. Our suits bent light around us, rendering us essentially invisible to human eyes. The door was not even locked. It hung slightly ajar, swinging gently in the warm evening breeze. Too easy, Velk muttered, which should have been my first warning that the universe was about to teach us a lesson in humility. We slipped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by the fading sunlight streaming through gaps in the walls. There was minimal furniture, a table, some chairs that looked like they might collapse if you sneezed near them, and in the corner, on a worn mattress covered with a thin blanket, lay the target, a human child, no more than 5 or 6 cycles old, sleeping peacefully. Subject acquired, I whispered into the comm. Beginning sample collection. That was when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a shadow. A trick of the light. But then the shadow moved, and I realized with growing horror that we were not alone in the room. Curled up next to the sleeping child, so close they were almost touching, was a creature I had never seen before. It was low to the ground, covered in coarse black and white fur, with a body that seemed too long and too thick at the same time. Its claws, and I noticed the claws immediately, were curved and wickedly sharp, each one roughly the length of my longest finger. What? Velk said slowly. Is that? I checked my scanner frantically. Database says it is a Mellivora capensis. Common name, honey badger. A badger? Like the docile burrowing creatures from Sector 9? Apparently not, I said, because my scanner was now showing me the creature's threat assessment, and the numbers were climbing higher than they had any right to. Velk, the database is listing this thing as one of the most aggressive species on the planet. How aggressive can it be? Look at the size of it. That was Velk's second mistake. His first was coming on this mission at all. The honey badger raised its head, slowly, deliberately. And even though we were cloaked, even though there was no possible way it should have detected us, its dark eyes locked onto exactly where we were standing. I stopped breathing. I am not sure my hearts were even beating. The creature's gaze was not the blank stare of an animal. It was calculating, intelligent, furious. Do not move, I whispered to Velk. It cannot see us. We are cloaked. I am aware of that, Velk, but I am asking you to please, for once in your life, trust me and do not move. The honey badger rose to its feet with the fluid grace of a predator that has never lost a fight. It positioned itself between us and the sleeping child, and I swear on all 13 moons of my homeworld, It smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a welcoming smile. The kind of smile that says, I know exactly where your soft organs are located, and I am considering the best way to remove them. We should leave, I said. We need the samples. Velk. The High Command will have our appendages if we return empty-handed again. I would rather have appendages to lose. But Velk was already moving forward, his sample kit extended. The honey badger watched him approach with the patience of a creature that knows it holds all the advantages. It did not growl. It did not bare its teeth. It simply waited. Velk got within 2 meters of the child, then 1 meter. He was reaching out with the tissue extractor when the honey badger moved. I have seen a lot of things in my career as a surveyor. I have seen solar storms that could strip the atmosphere off a planet. I have witnessed civilizations rise and fall. I once saw a Cromnian battlecruiser explode so spectacularly that the debris field became a tourist attraction. None of that prepared me for watching a 10-kilogram mammal launch itself at my partner like a furry missile of pure hatred. The honey badger hit Velk square in the chest with enough force to knock him backward. He stumbled, flailing, and crashed into the table, which collapsed under his weight exactly as I had predicted it would. The creature was on him instantly, claws raking across his environmental suit with sounds that made my skin crawl. Get it off me, Velk screamed, and there went our stealth protocols. I am trying. I rushed forward with the neural disruptor, but the honey badger was moving too fast, too erratically. Every time I got a lock on it, it twisted away, all while continuing to savage Velk with what I can only describe as enthusiastic malice. The child woke up. Of course the child woke up. How could the child not wake up with all the screaming and crashing and general mayhem happening 3 meters away? She sat up, rubbing her eyes, looking confused but not frightened. Then she saw the honey badger attacking the now visible Velk, who had lost his cloaking field when his suit got shredded, and she did something that made absolutely no sense. She laughed. She laughed. Kato, she called out, which I later learned was the creature's name, because of course humans name their nightmare animals. Kato, stop playing, let the funny man go. Playing. She thought this was playing. The honey badger, Kato, paused in its assault just long enough to glance at the child. Then it looked back at Velk, seemed to consider the request, and released him with what I interpreted as reluctance. Velk scrambled backward, his suit torn in a dozen places, his dignity even more shredded than his clothing. We are leaving, now, agreed. But as we turned to flee, more lights came on in the dwelling. A door I had not noticed before swung open, and a human adult appeared. Female. Tall. She took in the scene with remarkable calm. Her child sitting on the bed, the honey badger looking pleased with itself, and 2 aliens backing toward the exit. Oh, she said. You are real. I apologize for the intrusion, I babbled, because when faced with an angry parent, even alien protocol suggests politeness. We meant no harm. We were just leaving. Right now. Immediately. You came for samples, yes? For your research? I blinked all 3 of my eye membranes in surprise. You know about us? We see your ships sometimes, lights in the sky. We are not stupid. She crossed her arms. But if you touch my daughter, Kato will be the least of your problems. The honey badger, as if to emphasize this point, growled. Actually growled this time. The sound was low and rumbling and promised terrible things. Understood, completely understood. We will simply be going now. We backed out of the dwelling, keeping our eyes on both the human and the honey badger. Once we were outside, we ran. Not walked, not jogged, ran. Full speed back to the hoverpod, with the sound of that child's laughter following us through the African night. Velk collapsed into his seat, breathing hard. What was that thing? A honey badger. I told you. That is not a badger. Badgers are peaceful. They eat roots and grubs. Earth honey badgers, I am learning, are somewhat different. I pulled up the full database entry on my console and began reading aloud. Mellivora capensis, known for its ferocious defensive ability and fearless nature, has been observed fighting off lions, hyenas, and even Cape buffalo. Possesses extremely thick skin that is resistant to bee stings, porcupine quills, and even machete strikes. Has been documented raiding beehives for honey despite being stung thousands of times, hence the name. That should all be classified as a weapon. The entry continues. Honey badgers have been known to attack humans, livestock, and vehicles when threatened. There are reports of them breaking into military bases. One specimen allegedly delayed construction of an entire highway for 3 weeks by repeatedly destroying equipment and chasing off workers. Velk stared at me. And humans keep these as pets? The data does not indicate they are pets. More like cohabitants. The relationship appears to be based on mutual respect and possibly shared stubbornness. They are insane. Every last one of them. I could not argue with that assessment. We lifted off and headed back toward the orbital station. Our sample containers empty. Our pride thoroughly bruised. The mission report was going to be humiliating to file. I could already imagine the High Command's response. But something bothered me as we ascended through the atmosphere. I kept thinking about that child, sleeping so peacefully next to a creature that could tear apart enemies 10 times its size. The trust. The bond. The way the honey badger had positioned itself as a guardian without hesitation. Velk, I said slowly. What do you think would happen if we ever had to fight humans? Why would we fight humans? They are primitive. Pre-warp. They barely have functional spaceflight. Humor me. He was quiet for a moment, probably replaying the evening's events in his mind. I think we would lose. Why? Because any species that befriends creatures like that sleeps next to them without fear, that teaches their children to trust such animals as protectors? He shook his head. That is not a species that knows how to be afraid, and you cannot conquer what you cannot frighten. I filed that observation away for later. It seemed important. When we docked at the station, our supervisor, Commander Threx, was waiting. He looked at our damaged equipment, our torn suits, and our lack of samples with the expression of someone whose entire career is flashing before his eyes. Tell me, he said wearily, that you at least have footage. We do, I confirmed, pulling up the recording from my suit camera. But I should warn you, sir, it is not going to make sense. We watched the playback together. The sleeping child, the honey badger's lightning-fast attack, the mother's calm acceptance of alien intruders, and through it all, that creature standing guard with the intensity of a soldier protecting royalty. Commander Threx watched in silence. When it finished, he sat back and rubbed his forehead with all 4 of his hands. Gentlemen, he said finally, I am updating Earth's threat classification from level 2 to level 7. 7? Velk protested. Sir, they do not even have faster than light travel. They do not need it, Surveyor. Any civilization that has domesticated apex predators and taught them to guard their young is not one we want to antagonize. Imagine what they will be like once they do reach the stars. Imagine them bringing those animals with them. I thought about fleets of human ships, each one crewed by descendants of people who slept next to honey badgers. Ships where every corridor might hide a creature bred for pure aggression and zero fear. I am never going back to Earth, I announced. None of us are, the commander agreed. I am recommending a 500-year observation period before any further direct contact. Make it 1,000, Velk added. Maybe by then they will have evolved past keeping attack animals as roommates. But I suspected they would not. That was just who humans were. A species that looked at the most dangerous creatures on their planet and thought, yes, this would make an excellent friend for my child. And honestly, after what I had witnessed, I respected them for it. Feared them, certainly. But respected them too. The honey badger had sent a message that night. One that echoed across the vastness of space. Humans do not face danger alone. They bring the storm with them. And heaven help anyone who threatens what they love. We left Earth alone after that. The surveys continued from a distance, using only remote probes and satellite imagery. No more ground missions. No more direct contact. Sometimes, late at night on the observation deck, I still think about that little girl sleeping peacefully while a living weapon stood guard. I wonder if she knows how lucky she is. I wonder if any of them do. Probably not. To them, it is just normal. Just another day on a planet where evolution went absolutely wild, and humans looked at the results and said, sure, why not make friends? The galaxy is vast and filled with wonders. But Earth? Earth is something else entirely. A world of beautiful contradictions and terrifying partnerships. And somewhere in that African settlement, a honey badger named Kato is still standing guard, ready to face down anything foolish enough to threaten its family. Even aliens with good intentions and really expensive equipment, especially them. 3 months passed before I stopped having nightmares about those claws. The council had accepted our report with the kind of silence that spoke volumes. No reprimands, no demotions, just a quiet notation in Earth's file, and a directive that all future observations would be conducted from orbit. Apparently, we were not the first team to return with similar stories, just the first ones honest enough to admit we had been bested by something that weighed less than a standard cargo container. I thought that was the end of it. File the paperwork, accept the reassignment to a safer sector, and spend the rest of my career surveying lifeless moons where the most dangerous thing I might encounter was a methane geyser. Then Lieutenant Drexa from Intelligence Division showed up at my quarters. Drexa was a Valtorian, all sharp angles and sharper mind. She had skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that saw through any deception you might attempt. I had met her exactly twice before, both times at mandatory briefings I had tried very hard to sleep through. "Surveyor Qorth," she said without preamble when I opened my door. "We need to talk about your incident. There is nothing to discuss. It is all in the report. Your report mentioned the human mother recognized your purpose immediately, that she knew about survey missions." I hesitated. "Yes. She said they see ships sometimes. That concerns us." "Why?" "They are pre-contact. Sightings happen. It is not like they can do anything about it." Drexa stepped inside without invitation, which was remarkably rude but also very much in character. She pulled up a holoscreen from her wrist device and showed me footage I had never seen before. It was Earth. Same continent. Different location. But the scene was disturbingly familiar. A crashed reconnaissance drone, human civilians approaching it, and then something that made my blood run cold. Armed humans. Not with their primitive projectile weapons, but with technology that looked suspiciously similar to our own energy rifles. They surrounded the drone, worked to disable its self-destruct sequence, and hauled it away on a primitive vehicle. "This was taken 6 weeks ago," Drexa said. "And before you ask, yes, we confirmed the weapons were reverse-engineered from recovered survey equipment. That is impossible. Our gear has fail-safes, encryption, self-destruct protocols, which they bypassed. All of them." She swiped to another image. "This is from a facility in what they call Nevada. Underground, shielded from our scans. We only found it because one of their own people leaked information through their primitive internet." The image showed a massive hangar. Inside it sat 3 of our survey pods in various states of disassembly. Humans in white coats were crawling all over them like insects on a carcass, taking measurements, removing components, learning. "They are studying us," I whispered, aggressively. And here is the truly alarming part. Another swipe. This time, the image was of a document covered in human writing. "This is a classified military briefing we intercepted. Want to know what it says?" I did not, but she told me anyway. "It is a proposal to weaponize local fauna against potential extraterrestrial threats. They are specifically breeding and training animals based on aggression profiles and loyalty metrics." She looked at me. "Your honey badger? That was not a random pet. That family is part of a rural defense network. They have been preparing for contact for decades." My legs suddenly felt unreliable. I sat down heavily on my sleeping pod. "You are telling me the entire planet is getting ready for us?" "Not the entire planet. Most humans still think they are alone in the universe. But their governments, their military structures, they know. And they are preparing." She closed the holoscreen. "Which brings me to why I am here. We need current intelligence on their animal weaponization programs. Ground-level observation. And you are the only surveyor who has encountered one of these creatures and lived to document it." "Absolutely not. Qorth. No. Never. I am not going back there. You do not have a choice. The Council has authorized this mission personally. Then the Council can personally go to Earth and face down a honey badger. I am sure they would love to see how their tentacles fare against those claws." Drexa sat down across from me, and her voice softened in a way that was somehow more frightening than her usual intensity. "Listen to me carefully. We have intercepted communications suggesting humans are planning their first faster-than-light test within the next 5 cycles. 5 cycles, Qorth. They are going to be among the stars sooner than anyone predicted. So we establish formal contact. Follow first contact protocols. And say what? Hello? We have been abducting your people and stealing your resources for centuries without permission? That will go wonderfully. She leaned forward. We need to understand what they are capable of, what they have been planning. If they reach the stars with hostile intentions, the entire Galactic Council is at risk. Or, I suggested, we could just leave them alone and hope they are friendly. Would you be friendly if you discovered we had been violating your world's sovereignty for 200 years? She had a point. A terrible, inconvenient point. Fine, I said, because arguing with Intelligence Division was like arguing with a black hole. You just got pulled in, no matter what. What exactly do you want me to do? Return to that settlement. Observe the family. Document the honey badger's training and capabilities. Find out if this is an isolated case or part of a larger pattern. And when the creature tears me apart, try not to let that happen. The paperwork would be extensive. That was supposed to be a joke, I think. With Drexa, it was hard to tell. So there I was, 2 weeks later, descending through Earth's atmosphere again, absolutely certain this was how my career would end. Not with glory or honor, but with a footnote in a classified report: death by domestic animal. Do not recommend. This time I was alone. Velk had refused the mission so vehemently that they had put him on administrative leave. I did not blame him. I would have done the same if I had any sense of self-preservation left. I landed the pod in the same location as before, behind the same cluster of trees, and spent 20 minutes just sitting there working up the courage to move. The sun was setting again. I was beginning to suspect that was the only time Earth looked even remotely welcoming. The settlement seemed unchanged. Same dusty paths, same modest dwellings, same sense that life here moved at a pace the rest of the galaxy had forgotten existed. I approached the family's home carefully, this time equipped with better sensors, and absolutely no intention of going inside. I would observe from a distance. Record data. Leave before anything with claws noticed me. The child was outside. Of course she was outside. Why would anything be easy? She was sitting in the dirt, drawing pictures with a stick, while the honey badger lounged nearby in the shade. The creature looked exactly as I remembered. Compact, powerful, and radiating an aura of barely contained violence. But here is what struck me. The girl was not afraid. She kept glancing at the honey badger with casual affection, the way you might look at a friend while sharing a comfortable silence. And Kato, for all his terrifying reputation, seemed completely relaxed. His eyes were half closed, his breathing steady. This was not a weapon on guard duty. This was a companion at rest. Then the girl spoke, and I nearly fell out of the tree I was hiding in. You can come out, Mr. Alien. Kato knows you are there anyway. The honey badger's eyes snapped open and locked onto my position with unsettling accuracy. How? How did they detect me? My cloaking field was active. My biological signature was masked. There was no possible way a pre-warp species should be able to penetrate our stealth technology. Kato can smell you, the girl continued, as if reading my thoughts. And he can hear your heartbeat. Mama says you came back because you are curious about us. I deactivated the cloaking field. There was no point maintaining it if a child and a honey badger could see through it anyway. I climbed down from the tree, moving slowly, keeping my hands visible and away from any equipment that might be construed as threatening. Your mother is very perceptive, I managed to say. She is inside making dinner. She said if you came back, I should invite you to eat with us. The girl smiled. It was a genuine smile, full of warmth and zero guile. My name is Amara. What is yours? Qorth. That is a funny name. Do you want to meet Kato properly? Every survival instinct I possessed screamed no. But I had come here for intelligence, and you cannot gather intelligence from a safe distance when your subjects have already invited you to dinner. I would be honored, I lied. Amara stood up and walked over to the honey badger, who was watching me with an expression I could only describe as skeptical. She put her hand on his head, scratching behind his ears. Kato, this is Qorth. He is a friend. Probably. We are still deciding. The honey badger made a sound somewhere between a grunt and a growl. It was not encouraging. He says you can come closer, but if you try anything bad, he will eat your face. That is fair, I said. Because what else do you say to that? I approached slowly, every muscle tensed for flight. Kato watched my every movement with those dark, intelligent eyes. When I was close enough to see the individual hairs in his coat, he sniffed the air, analyzing my scent, probably calculating exactly how many bites it would take to devour me. Then he yawned, showing me teeth that belonged in nightmares, and settled his head back down on his paws. He likes you, Amara announced. Or at least, he does not want to kill you right now. That is good. The mother emerged from the dwelling, wiping her hands on a cloth. She looked at me standing in her yard with her daughter and their combat-ready mammal, and shook her head with what looked like amused resignation. I am Naomi, she said. Welcome back. I assume this visit is official? How did you know I would return? Because you left without answers last time. And beings like you always need answers. She gestured toward the house. Come inside. We can talk while we eat. Fair warning, dinner is mostly vegetables. We cannot afford meat often. I followed them inside, acutely aware of Kato padding along behind me, his claws clicking on the hard-packed earth floor. The dwelling was exactly as I remembered. Simple, functional, filled with evidence of a life lived without excess. Naomi served the meal in wooden bowls. Some kind of stew made from local plants, thick and aromatic. Amara ate hungrily, swinging her legs under the table. Kato positioned himself between me and the child, accepting small pieces of vegetables that Amara snuck to him. So, Naomi said, breaking the silence, what does your council want to know? I nearly choked on my food. I did not say I was from a council. You did not have to. You have that look. The look of someone following orders they do not entirely agree with. She took a bite of her stew. Let me save you some time. Yes, we know about the survey missions. Yes, some of our governments have been recovering your technology. Yes, we have been preparing for the day when you decide we are worth making formal contact with. You say that very calmly for someone whose world has been violated repeatedly. Would panic help? Would anger? She shrugged. We adapt. It is what humans do. We see a problem, we figure out how to survive it. Sometimes that means making friends with animals that could kill us. Sometimes it means learning from beings who think we are too primitive to notice them. And Kato? I asked. Is he part of this preparation? Kato is family, Amara said firmly. He protects me because he loves me. Naomi's expression softened as she looked at her daughter. She is right, but there is more to it. The rural defense network I am part of, we train certain animals to recognize threats, not just predators, unusual threats, things that do not belong. She looked directly at me. Things from the sky. You are building an army of animals. We are building partnerships. There is a difference. She stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a worn notebook. Kato is not the only one. There are families with trained dogs that can detect your ships from kilometers away. Birds that can spot your drones before your sensors notice them. Even some families with large cats that have bonded with their children. She opened the notebook, showing me pages filled with notes, drawings, and what looked like training protocols. It was sophisticated, methodical, terrifying in its implications. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because, Naomi said, sitting back down, we want you to take a message back to your council. We know you are watching us. We know you have been taking samples and studying us like we are specimens in a laboratory. And we are telling you, clearly and directly, that if you ever come here with hostile intentions, you will not be fighting just humans. Kato growled softly, as if emphasizing the point. You will be fighting everything we have bonded with, every creature we have befriended, every animal that has learned to trust us and defend us. She leaned forward. Do you understand what that means? Humans do not fight alone. We never have. That is our strength. I thought about fleets of warships descending on Earth, expecting to conquer a primitive world, only to be met by coordinated resistance from both humans and the planet's most dangerous predators. It was absurd. It was brilliant. It was absolutely something humans would do. Your council should also know, Naomi continued, that we will reach the stars soon. When we do, we will remember who came in peace and who came to steal from us. Choose wisely which category you want to fall into. We ate in silence after that, the weight of her words settling over the table like morning fog. Amara kept feeding bits of food to Kato, completely oblivious to the diplomatic confrontation that had just occurred. When the meal was finished, I stood to leave. Thank you for your hospitality and your honesty. Will you tell them? Naomi asked. Your council? Will you tell them what I said? Every word. I looked down at Kato, who was watching me with those calculating eyes. And I will recommend we approach Earth with respect when the time comes. That is all we ask. I left the dwelling and walked back to my pod under a sky full of stars that suddenly seemed less certain, less knowable. Behind me, I could hear Amara singing some human song to Kato, her voice carrying through the warm evening air. The report I filed when I returned was the most important document I have ever written. I included everything: the training programs, the rural defense networks, the partnership between humans and their planet's apex predators. I included Naomi's warning and my own observations about the unique nature of human resilience. The council read it, debated it, and then, for the first time in galactic history, they voted to approach a pre-warp civilization with an offer of peaceful contact, rather than waiting for them to reach the stars on their own. We made first contact with Earth 6 months later. It was formal, cautious, but respectful. And when the human delegation arrived at the council station for the first negotiations, they brought something with them that made every representative in the chamber go absolutely silent. A honey badger. Not Kato, but one of his relatives. The creature sat calmly beside the human ambassador, watching us all with those dark, intelligent eyes, a living reminder of what humans bring with them wherever they go. The ambassador smiled at our shocked expressions. We want you to understand something fundamental about humanity. We do not dominate nature. We partner with it. And any alliance you make with us includes the allies we have already made. The honey badger yawned, showing those terrible teeth, and the entire Galactic Council learned a lesson that day. Never underestimate a species that teaches its children to sleep next to weapons and call them friends. Never assume that weakness in technology means weakness in spirit, and never ever threaten something a human loves, because they will not face you alone. They will bring the storm. And the storm has very sharp claws.